emerged from a hospital waiting room with my hands wrapped like I tried to catch barbed wire on instinct. I went camping last weekend at a state park outside my town. That is what the reservation email said. Loop C. I still have the receipt. It is smeared from rain and sweat, but I can read enough of it. State park, camping fee, 1 night, vehicle fee, total $35. A reservation ID that means nothing to anyone except me. I am not asking you to believe in the paranormal. Something mechanical happened to me out there. Something you can buy, carry in a tote, and switch on. I camp alone a lot. I do it the boring way. I tell my sister where I am. I park nose out. I lock food up. I do not hike off trail at night. I do not drink. I do not go looking for trouble. This time I wanted one quiet night and a morning coffee that tastes like smoke. I got there around 4:40 p.m. The ranger in the booth tore my printed slip and gave me the usual talk about quiet hours and not leaving coolers unattended. The entrance sign had a changeable letterboard underneath it. Fire danger was moderate. No moving firewood. Quiet hours 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The park was half full. Families in big SUVs. A couple with a rooftop tent. A group of teenagers arguing over a Bluetooth speaker that kept cutting out when they walked too far from it. Loop C sat deeper in the pines. The road was dead and washboarded. My spot was on the outer edge. Not the best view, but private. Picnic table, fire ring. One of those steel bear boxes bolted into a slab of concrete. The kind that squeals when you open it. The first thing that felt off was the posts. There were 4 skinny fiberglass stakes around my side, about waist height, with bright orange reflective tape on the tops, like survey markers. They were spaced in a loose square that did not match a normal campsite boundary. Each stake had a black zip tie near the top, cinched tight around nothing, cinched. I stood there longer than I want to admit, staring at them with my hands on my hips like that would solve anything. I told myself it was maintenance, hazard, tree marking, utility work, something. I set up my tent, a little 2-person backpacking tent. I parked nose out. I put my cooler in the bear box. Here is this stupid human mistake I keep replaying. I did not latch the bear box the first time. I closed it. I heard the heavy door thunk. I walked away thinking it was secure. 10 minutes later, I walked back and realized the latch was still open by half an inch. The way it sits when you do not pull it down and lock it. I muttered at myself, fixed it, and moved on. Around 6:10, I walked to the restroom building to wash up. The building was way back, I passed a bigger site where a dad was pounding stakes into the ground with the flat side of a hatchet. He nodded at me and said the bugs were insane. I agreed, even though I hadn't noticed any bugs yet. He looked past me toward my side and squinted like he was trying to read something in the dark. "What are those balls?" he asked. "Already here," I said. "Probably maintenance." He made a face like he did not love that answer, then went back to his tent. I made a small fire. Not a big one, just enough to feel like I earned being outside. I ate a pouch dinner and sat on the bench with my headlamp around my neck, listening to the campground noise thin out. A baby cried somewhere down the loop. Someone laughed too loud and got shushed. A car door slammed. Then it got quiet in that way campgrounds do, where you still hear people, but it comes in little distant pieces. At 9:58 my phone flipped from 5G to SOS. I remember because I looked at it before crawling into my sleeping bag. I texted my sister, "All good night." It failed to send. Not surprising. Lots of parks have dead spots. I fell asleep with my keys in my hand. That is another thing I normally never do. I always put them in the same bucket. This time I was half asleep and I set them on the picnic table when I tightened my tent guy lines, then forgot to pick them back up. I did not realize that until later when it mattered. I slept for maybe 2 hours. I woke up because my tent moved. Not a gentle flutter of wind, a hard tug, like someone grabbed the rainfly and yanked. My first thought was an animal rushing past. Then the tent moved again, lower, like pressure at ankle height. I sat up fast. My elbow hit the tent wall. My heart went straight to my throat. I listened. No footsteps, no snorting. Just a faint sound outside that didn't belong. A tiny clicking, steady, like a cheap plastic pen being pressed over and over. I found my headlamp and turned it on, pointing it at the tent wall. The nylon glowed. Shadows moved wrong. Thin lines crossed the fabric. Not like branches. Not like the normal wavering shapes you see when a light hits canvas. I pushed the door zipper open just enough to look out. The beam hit the orange tape on the nearest stake and flashed bright. Behind it, in the dark, something caught the light in sharp little glints. Clear line, fishing line, monofilament, dozens of strands stretched between the stakes. So much in height, some at waist height, some higher. A web that had not been there when I went to sleep. And it was moving, not swaying, pulling, tightening. The clicking got faster. A line snapped tight across the front of my tent door, and the nylon greased around it like it was being cinched. The tent shifted an inch, then another. finally nicked through. The moment it broke, the free end snapped back and whipped my knuckles. I rolled, trying to get clear. A line tightened under my armpit. Another caught my ankle and my foot slid toward the stake, like the ground had turned slick. I started yelling, loud, ugly. I screamed for help until my throat burned. No one came running. Either nobody heard, or nobody wanted to charge into a campsite full of invisible line. Then I heard something new, not clicking, a soft electronic chirp, like a key fob, followed by a longer tone. One of the winch boxes changed pitch. It went from click to a smooth high whine for half a second. The line on my wrist tightened again and I understood what it was doing. This wasn't just a web, it was a net that was closing around me. I crawled toward the nearest box, cutting lines as I went. Each cut line snapped back, stinging, sometimes catching my clothes. The knife handle got slick with blood. My wrist burned in a clean groove where the line had opened it. I reached the nearest box. It was strapped to the trunk with a ratchet strap. A thick battery pack sat beside it, wired in. On top was a small antenna, like a cheap handheld radio. The line ran through a metal guide and onto a spool. I drove the knife down and cut as close to the spool as I could. The motor protested. The line went slack for a breath. Then the spool reversed and yanked the slack back. The line tightened around my calf again, harder, like the system corrected itself. Something in the trees flashed to my left. A red dot, low, moving. My headlamp caught a shape behind a trunk. Someone using the trees, keeping distance, a hand raised. I saw the rectangle of a phone or a remote. The red dot moved again and settled on my torso, steady, like it was aimed on purpose. My stomach turned cold, not because of the dot, because of what it meant. This was for me. I grabbed the battery cable and ripped it out of the box. The clicking stopped. The line around my leg went slack so suddenly I almost fell backward. For half a second it was quiet, except for my breathing, and the soft snap of the fire dying down in the ring. Then another clicking started further away, another box, a backup. The lines began tightening again, slower, but still tightening. The person in the trees shifted, leaves crushed under a careful step. I did not wait. I crawled out of the tightening net, cutting and dragging, getting snagged, freeing myself in inches. My shorts tore, my skin caught line, and I felt it burn new grooves across my thigh and forearm. My headlight bounced, turning trees into quick flashes. I got to my car and reached for my keys. Nothing. My pocket was empty. I screamed and got at it. The knife finally sliced through. The tension snapped back into the trees. I fell into the seat, slammed the door, and locked it. Lines slapped the outside of my car. I heard them bing against the metal like cables flicking a drum. In my headlight beam, I saw the stakes again, and my stomach dropped even more. There were more than 4 extra stakes beyond the campsite boundary, closer to the road, hidden in brush. The web reached toward the road like it expected me to run. I started the car and threw it into the reverse. The tires spun on dirt. The car lurched and I felt a jolt, like I hit something soft but strong. The hood dipped, the line stretched. For a second I thought the car would be held in place. Then the lines snapped. The sound was sharp, multiplied. Whip cracks. The hood shook. Something slapped the windshield and left a wet streak. I reversed hard, then swung forward, aiming for the main road out of the loop. In my mirror, between trunks, I saw the person move. A silhouette, closer now, reflective tape on their sleeves, orange like the stakes. They stepped toward my car and raised a hand, not waving, pointing. My headlights swept the ground, and for a second I saw what they'd been standing near. A plastic tote half buried in needles, lid cracked open, full of coiled line, clear and more black boxes. Supplies. I hit the gas. On the way out, I laid on the horn until it sounded wrong. I wanted lights to come on. I wanted witnesses. Some did. Porch light snapped on. A man stepped onto the road in socks. Hands up like he did not know whether to stop me or ask what was wrong. I did not stop. I drove straight to the entrance booth. It was closed, dark, but there was an emergency phone box by the gate. A small sign above it said to lift the receiver for emergencies and not to use it for reservations. My hand shook so badly I dropped the receiver once. I told the dispatcher someone had set wire traps in my campsite and there were motors pulling them tight. I kept saying wire because fishing line sounded too stupid for what it had done. A sheriff's deputy arrived first, then a ranger in a separate vehicle. They took one look at my wrists and legs and told me to sit. They drove back to Loop C with lights on. I didn't go with them. I couldn't make myself. I sat under a buzzing light and watched moths slam into the plastic cover while my blood dripped onto the concrete. I remember thinking, very clearly, that the drip was too slow to be real, like my brain was watching it in someone else's body. When the ranger came back, his face looked different, like he'd aged 10 years on the drive. He did not tell me it was nothing. He did not tell me that I'd imagined it. He said, "We found it. They found the stakes. They found the lines. They found multiple winch boxes still strapped to trees, still working, still pulling line even after I'd ripped The entrance still looks friendly. The little tourist board still advertises it like a peaceful place to unwind. Loopsy is closed now. There is new signage zip-tied to the permanent posts. Bright yellow, temporary. It says the area is closed due to utility work and not to enter Loopsy. If I ever camp again and see skinny fiberglass stakes with reflective tape that do not make sense or zip ties around nothing, I won't assume in its maintenance. I won't sleep in that sight. I won't step between those posts. And if I hear clicking in the dark that doesn't sound like an animal, I'm leaving. I'm doing it before the line starts moving. Because once they start pulling, you stop being a camper. You become a problem somebody planned to solve. That one is really good. It's very kind of like saw coded, I guess. It's very interesting. It's actually terrifying though. It's one thing like running from a person or a creature, but like when there's traps set up everywhere and all you want to do is run, but you have to be careful. That's really creepy. Especially because they set up traps expecting them to run. Okay, this next one is by Spot_Moth_Light. It is titled, I think stealth camping saved my life. Something like over 1,100 folks go missing each year in our national parks. That's what. A chance you'll be hit by lightning while your plane goes down. I was willing to take those odds, but after what I witnessed in those mountains, I am telling you, the reality isn't worth that risk. I can hardly close my eyes to sleep these days, let alone stand being in the dark as I type this. It's like that thing is still looking hunting me. I don't feel safe, even at this piece of shit roadside motel. Where do I even begin with this one? I mean, you hear about these things on online message boards. Someone so-and-so's friend or a cousin smells some ungodly musk while camping, or there is an unexplained trail closure due to a bear attack. Backpackers, we brush those things aside. Nothing can keep us from stretching our legs in some of the most remote places this country has to offer. We know we share that wilderness with animals, but nothing like this. The trip was all planned out. Well, sort of. I had an idea of where I wanted to go, but in typical fashion, I had slept in and was late lining up for the walk-up permits. No campsites were available, and I couldn't exactly detour around the park. This trip was all about putting the steps in, the miles, one foot after another for an uninterrupted footpath through the Pacific Northwest. A day hike then. That's what I promised the ranger. As skeptical as she looked, I think she felt sorry for me, eyeing the pack on my back and the dirt and grime I was caked in. Wouldn't hurt to let me have one night off the books, would it? So on I went, down that godforsaken trail that just hours before promised gnarly climbs. Stellar vistas, stellar vistas and roaring waterfalls with brisk lakes I could shed my clothes and leap into at my heart's content. The sun was only in the sky for a few hours by the time I began feeling off, like the birds chirping were missing their melodies, and even the flying insects were erratic. It was like someone was coaxing them along, saying, "Act normal so nobody suspects." Nature isn't supposed to feel like this. It's supposed to feel, well, natural. Even the lighting was off, like everything was bathed in the type of light that only happens during an eclipse, a bizarre silver-toned high noon. Everything around me was steeped in that oppressive eeriness, like I wasn't meant to be seeing the woods like this. Normally I would hide until dusk, but something in me told me to hunker down, get out of sight. Not only because I was planning to camp illegally in this park, but almost like the birds and the bugs were offering a warning. God, I just wish I saw it for what it was and turned around, swallowed my pride and tried again the next day. Fighting every instinct I had, I stepped off of the trail into the woods to my left, without permit. I wasn't supposed to be staying overnight outside an established campground. Stealth camping was my only option. It isn't just camping out of bounds. Getting caught carries consequences. I had to camp where I was hidden, somewhere nobody could find without it turning over a rock or two. There were a couple of campsites nearby, but nothing near enough for me to draw attention. It only took like 200 meters before I came into a clearing. The setting sun and cooling temperature made each sunbeam visible through the light mist now gathering in the canopy of trees. The smell of undisturbed soil, the barely there sound of the breeze through the leaves. That spot was perfect. I walked the perimeter of the clearing, staking out any spots to take, and had settled on a cluster of down trees draped across one another. Setting up a tent was too risky. Too many other campers were around, and they would surely knock on me to the rangers. I threw my gear in the hollow, laid out my sleeping bag, and began my nightly routine. The sun sets fast in the woods, unexpectedly fast sometimes. Being alone, there wasn't much keeping me up, so I crawled inside my refuge from the night and began piling some fallen leaves and other debris at the entrance of my shelter. I think that's what kept me alive. The silence that night was palpable. No insects, no rustling of critters, nothing. It was like the trees themselves wanted to hide from the darkness. In my years of camping in the backcountry, I have only experienced that silence maybe once. It puts you on edge. Every leaf falling to the earth rattles you, as if they announced your presence to whatever is around, listening. I wish that silence lasted longer. A frantic stumble through the undergrowth is what roused me from my sleeping bag at first. Then the cries for help, and they were coming right towards me. I had peeked my head out of my sleeping bag, trembling in paralyzed fear, thoughts racing about whatever danger was barreling towards me. sadistic than the last, the once running blood now caked with dirt and sweat. Tears were streaming down her face, and only the look of abject horror was frozen into her features. That's about all I could make out in the moonlight. She was being chased. No, hunted. Saying it was a chase makes it seem like there was hope of a different outcome, or even fair odds. The smell announced its presence before the lumbering footsteps, like rotting eggs and a road-killed skunk left in the sun for a few days. It encroached upon my once serene hollow with violence and disrespect. I had to bury my face into the soil to keep myself from gagging. His screams had risen into full-blown hysterics as this thing loomed towards her. His scrambling backwards created little difference in the gap that creature was rapidly closing. Its movements were so effortless, nearly silent, as if the beast wasn't bigger than any grizzly I've ever seen. The claws on its feet carved deep grooves into the moss-covered floor, and its arms so long they nearly dragged behind it, almost how you'd expect an orangutan or a gorilla to walk. I wish I could say I was the hero that saved the day, the man who triumphantly rose from his hideaway to scare the beast off and save the damsel in distress. But I wasn't. I cowered, doing everything in my power to quit from shaking in terror. Silently, I moved as much dirt, rotting branches, decayed leaves, and Lord knows what else onto my body and gear to hide myself, to stay hidden. I couldn't move an inch. Even a twitch of muscle felt like an invitation for attention. Cocooned by decay and soil, all I could do was watch. The beast was upon her now, standing over her as she wept and begged for help that was never going to come. The hulking mass of fur reached out with arms that once dragged at its sides towards the poor woman's neck. Claws blackened with viscera and dirt slowly dug into her windpipe as her shrieks slowly subsided into nothing but a whimper. Its maw expectantly opened as a roar that shook the earth echoed through the clearing, bloodied saliva dripping over its prey. The sound of it clamping onto her flesh is one that will never leave my nightmares. The effortlessness of the tearing of flesh, the stomach-lurching scent of her coppery blood filling the air, the sounds of the beast feasting on her flesh, her cries as she was eaten alive. It wasn't until the wind shifted that the creature lost interest in its meal. It looked right past my little hollow, the hollow I had already half buried myself into, like an open invitation into an early grave. Its muzzle turned towards the sky as it started to sniff the air. It could smell me, I swear it. The few steps it took towards my direction were agonizing, deliberate, like how your older brother would approach the closet you sought refuge in during hide and seek. I couldn't look anymore. I closed my eyes tight and waited for the inevitable, but it never came. All night I spent with my eyes welted shut, with only the sound of teeth tearing into flesh filling the woods. And oh God, the stench. I stayed there, motionless, for what felt like days. Even the beast had moved on. Even when the beast had moved on, I dared not. Hunger and paranoia got the better of me, sightsee the night prior, a young woman. I explained everything I saw to search and rescue. Down the damn clearing, I was met with the incredulous glances and stifled coughs. I suppose I couldn't blame them. I looked like I had taken a literal dead nap, but they just took my statement as if it were business as usual. Then the ranger who checked on me the day prior didn't even flinch, almost like they knew her fate before I collapsed on that stupid gravel drive. Just another missing persons flyer around the local towns. This brings me to this evening, 3 days later, sitting here typing this on those same message boards we are told to ignore. The message boards that claim the sights and scents of the forest or just our imaginations. I don't think I actually hid from the beast that night. I only bought some time. The smell is only getting stronger, and no matter where I go, it follows. I bet it caught a whiff of me and let me go. To anybody that will listen, the smell of rotting eggs is seeping through every roadside motel I stay at. The very same smell countless backpackers and backcountry campers have sworn up and down belong to something out there in those damn woods. It exists, whatever it is. The park system is hiding something from us. I can't risk it following me out of these woods, but please, don't be the hero. Hide. That one was really good. The thought of having to try and stay as quiet as possible while that is happening is so creepy. And just hoping and praying it doesn't spot you or smell you. This next story is by Kamal Rank. It's titled, "The campsite I found in the woods was perfect. Too perfect." I'm rating this from a motel because I had to leave my tent behind. I need to write this down. I need to get it out of my head and into the world because I feel like I'm going crazy and because I need to warn people. I'm an experienced hiker. I'm not one of those weekend warriors who sticks to the paved, well-marked trails. I like the deep woods, the places where you can walk for a whole day and not see another soul. I had a long weekend, so I decided to tackle a remote trail in a state forest a few hours from my home. My plan was simple: hike in about 4 or 5, 6 miles. Find a good spot, camp for the night, and hike out the next day. Standard stuff. The hike-in was beautiful. The air was crisp, the sky was brilliant, cloudless blue, and the late autumn sun cast long, golden shafts of light through the canopy. The only sounds were the crunch of my boots on the fallen leaves, the chatter of distant sparrows, and the wind whispering through the trees. This is why I do it. This feeling of absolute peace, of being completely disconnected from the noise of the world. After a few hours of steady hiking, I started looking for a place to make camp. I was looking for the usual, a relatively flat spot, not too close to the trail, preferably with an access to a water source. And then I found it. It wasn't just a good spot. It was a perfect spot. Unnaturally perfect. I stepped off the main trail, pushing through a thicket of ferns, and found myself in a clearing I can only describe as idyllic. It was a perfect circle, maybe 40 feet in diameter. The ground was covered in a carpet of short, soft, vibrant green grass that looked more like a meticulously manicured lawn than a patch of wild forest floor. And the trees formed a perfect so symmetrical. The grass shouldn't be so uniform, so soft, but the overwhelming feeling was one of discovery, of incredible luck. It felt safe, protected. The circle of trees felt like a natural fence, a private room gifted to me by the forest itself. I dismissed my unease as my city dwellers' cynicism. I had found the jackpot of campsites. I dropped my pack with a contented sigh and set to work. The tent went up easily, the stakes sinking into the soft earth with a satisfying thump. I gathered some fallen branches from just outside the clearing and built a small, neat fire pit in the center. Soon, a cheerful little fire was crackling away, warding off the evening chill. I cooked a simple meal of dehydrated chili and sat on my log, watching the flames dance as the sun set, beating the sky above the circle of trees in hues of orange and purple. This, I thought to myself, is perfect. This is what it's all about. As true darkness fell, the forest changed, as it always does. The familiar woods of the day became a strange place of shadows and unseen movements, but I was snug in my little circle of light and warmth. I felt completely secure. After cleaning up my cook set, I doused the fire thoroughly, making sure every last ember was out, and crawled into my tent. I zipped up the flap, settled into my sleeping bag and tried to sleep, and that's when the perfection started to unravel. It began with a feeling, a strange sensation from the ground beneath me. It was a faint, almost imperceptible movement directly under my sleeping bag. It felt like insects, a whole lot of them moving around just under the tent floor. A low-grade, creepy, crawly feeling. I tried to ignore it. I'm in the woods after all. There are bugs. I pulled my sleeping bag tighter around me and closed my eyes, focusing on the gentle sounds of the night. But I couldn't sleep. The feeling persisted, a constant, subtle wriggling sensation against my back. The feeling persisted, a constant, subtle wriggling sensation against my back. It wasn't painful, it was just wrong. Then the noises started. They came from outside the tent, from the ring of trees surrounding the clearing. A soft snap of a twig, the dry rustle of leaves. At first I assumed it was just an animal, a deer maybe a raccoon, but the sounds were too regular. Snap, rustle, snap. They seemed to be moving slowly around the perimeter of the clearing, like someone is moving around me in the darkness. My heart started to beat a little faster. I lay there, perfectly still, my ears straining in the darkness, and then I saw the shadows. My tent is made of a thin, light-colored nylon. The moon was bright, and it cast eerie, dancing shadows of the tree branches onto the tent walls. I watched them, trying to calm my racing mind. It's just the wind, I told myself. The wind is making the branches move. But there was no wind. The air was dead still. Yet the shadows on my tent walls were moving, not just swaying, but actively, deliberately shifting. They were long, thin, finger-like shadows, and they were stroking the outside of my tent. I could see them sliding up the walls, tracing the seams like curious, probing fingers. I sat bolt upright, my breath caught in my throat. I grabbed my powerful flashlight from the mesh pocket beside me. My hand was shaking. I flicked it on, pointing the bright white beam at the tent wall. The shadow vanished in the glare. I swept caressing the thin fabric. I was terrified now. The feeling from the ground had intensified. It wasn't just a vague wriggling anymore. It was faster, more deliberate. It felt like 1,000 tiny needles tapping against the floor of the tent from underneath. I fumbled for the flashlight again, my hands slick with sweat, and pointed the beam down at the tent floor beside my sleeping bag. And I saw it. The grass had come through. Dozens of thin, blade-like shoots of the soft green grass had pierced the thick nylon floor of my tent. They were sticking up, maybe half an inch, like a patch of freshly sprouted lawn. But that wasn't the worst part. They were moving. They were swaying back and forth in perfect, horrifying unison. Swish, swish, swish. A tiny, hypnotic, rhythmic motion. They weren't just blades of grass. They were something else. Cilia, teeth, feelers. They were testing the air inside my tent. They were trying to find me. I screamed, then scrambled for the zipper of the tent door, my fingers feeling like useless, clumsy sausages. The sound of the zipper was obscenely loud in the silence. I burst out of the tent and stumbled to my feet in the center of the clearing, whipping the beam of my flashlight around wildly. The clearing was empty. The circle of trees stood silent and still. For a moment, a sliver of hope, of denial, cut through my panic. Maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe I had finally lost it. Then I turned the flashlight back on my tent, and the world fell out from under me. The tree branches weren't coming from the trees. They were coming from the ground. Dozens of thick, dark root-like tendrils, the colour of wet earth, had erupted from the soft green grass of the clearing. They were wrapped around my tent, constricting it, squeezing it like a giant boa constrictor. The sleek dome of my tent was misshapen, buckled inwards under the pressure. The roots were fibrous and sinewy, and I could swear I saw them pulsing with a slow, rhythmic beat, like a network of dark veins. They were pulling the tent downwards into the soft earth which seemed to be yielding, sinking. It looked like my tent was being eaten, digested, and in that moment of absolute, soul-shattering horror, I understood. I didn't think. I didn't grab my bag. I didn't try to save my expensive gear. My phone, my wallet, they were all in the tent. A tent that was currently being swallowed by the ground. The only thing I had was the flashlight in my hand and the clothes on my back. I ran. I ran for the gap in the trees that led back to the trail, my feet pounding on the soft, living earth. I felt a strange, sucking sensation with every step, as if the ground itself was trying to hold me back. I crashed through the ferns and onto the hard-packed dirt of the trail, and I didn't stop. The run through the forest was a blur of pure animal panic. The beam of my flashlight bounced and jittered, illuminating a chaotic, terrifying slideshow of dark tree trunks, twisted roots, and gaping black shadows. Every rustle of leaves was the creature, its tendrils slithering after me. Every shadow was escaping more. I ran until my lungs felt like they were on fire, until my legs were jelly, until I was sobbing and gasping for air. After what felt like an eternity, I saw it, a glint of reflected light through the trees. My car. The sight of that familiar, man-made object was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. my veins, not stopping until the sun was up and I was hundreds of miles away. I'm safe now, I guess. I'm in a cheap motel room, but I'm not okay. I close my eyes and I see it. The wiggling grass, the pulsing dog roots, the way my tent buckled and sank into the earth. I think the clearing wasn't a clearing. It was a thing. A living thing. The soft grass wasn't grass. It was a lure. The soft lining of a mouth. The perfect circle of trees wasn't a protective fence. It was the rim of the jaw. And I had willingly, happily set up my camp on its tongue. That one was really good. I really enjoyed that. Come on, Frank, always. Right, really good stories. It reminds me of like an anglerfish or like the house from Monster